Really interesting election analysis from Sean Trendy over at Real Clear Politics, laying out how Trump could stage a comeback and what his likely path to victory would look like. And it's really interesting because he digs into some data here that is worth considering. Number one, he says basically Trump needs his approval rating to solidify, points out that he's actually at a higher level approval rating than other incumbent presidents who have gone on to lose. He needs to be at about somewhere like 46, 47%, because that is the range in which, look, he doesn't have to win the popular vote to win.
That's what he won last time around.
That's what he won with last time around. So all he needs to do is get somewhere in that 47% range, and he could potentially eke it out, given the benefits that he has in the Electoral College. And his approval rating has, in fact, been ticking up to that range.
Yeah, that's right. And there were two other things which I thought were incredibly noteworthy. One of which, of course, we talk about all of these here all the time, which is the economy, which is that as people if coronavirus begins to continue downward, which it has been for now, we don't know for certain what it will be on Election Day. But if you look at the Sun Belt, for example, the Sun Belt analysis I was looking at yesterday from the Cook Political Institute actually showed the economy is the number one area of interest, and that the coronavirus is actually number 2 or number 3. So that was a significant drop-off, largely because I think the virus has burned through some of those states. But on the economy and in those issues, in that CPI analysis, they were tied. In a more recent poll, national poll, Sean Trendy points to one in which Trump leads Biden 52-44 on the economy, which is a reversal from earlier in the summer when they were completely tied. So if you return to that dynamic, if it becomes all about the economy, Trump, I think, has a deep trust with America over economic issues. I'm not entirely sure where it comes from.
There's been this long, history of propaganda of, the businessman will be great for the economy. I really think it just is that, reflex.
I thought maybe trade, maybe just the original 2016 message was so, different from what people hear. Regardless of what it is, Americans deeply trust Trump whenever it comes to the economy. It's almost a rock-solid thing that at best Biden can get to a tie game for him, and at worst for Biden is that Trump is leading him by double digits. And then the third one is the one that we've also talked about here extensively, which is that the losses of Biden within the traditional Democratic groups is very real, specifically Hispanics. And he talks about how black support and Hispanic support and others are lagging, particularly at the younger level, significantly for Biden. And again, Trump won not outright on the margins. And so any future Trump win would also be on the margins. So the margins would be higher approval, working class white support stays strong, suburban support maybe doesn't go as much as Biden wants, and middling and lesser support amongst Hispanic and black voters in places like Florida and Philadelphia and Milwaukee, in Wisconsin, and in Michigan as well, in the city of Detroit.
Yeah, in that Sun Belt analysis, which was, Florida, Arizona, and North Carolina?
North Carolina.
Maybe? Yeah, North Carolina. So what was really interesting is, in particular in Arizona, right, which could end up being a tipping point state. It's certainly a state that the Biden campaign is targeting. There aren't a lot of undecided voters left, which is something we've tracked across the country. But the undecided voters that were left were disproportionately Latino.
Right.
And disproportionately, they described themselves as moderate. And the economy was the number one issue. And on every single issue they polled, voters trusted Biden more than Trump, except the economy.
Right.
So the one issue where those undecided voters are saying, this is my number one thing, Trump actually has an edge. I thought that was really interesting, and that was, again, in those Sun Belt swing states. But we've seen, obviously the economy is going to be important in every state in the entire country, whether you're looking at the sort of industrial Midwestern path or the Sun Belt path. The lack of enthusiasm for Biden is a real thing, and he's got all the opportunity in the world to change that and actually put out an agenda that matches the rhetoric about FDR. They keep feeding these pieces to the press that they keep picking up on about he's going to be bold, it's going to be FDR. But then when the reporters ask okay, what does it look like? How much money are you going to spend? What are you going to actually do? They're like, well, we don't know. We'll get back to you. The Republicans, it's going to be hard, and the deficit and all this stuff. So all the opportunity in the world is there for him to pull even or pull ahead of Trump on the economic numbers, excite the young voters, excite the Latino voters, get them into the Democratic camp. But there doesn't seem to be any interest in actually doing that. There's some real arrogance here. And there's also arrogance in terms of the campaign strategy itself. Yep. This is something we're going to ask Michael more about as well. But Biden basically doesn't have a ground game. And look, I understand it's a pandemic. We can throw this up on the Zach Carter's observation here. This is from an NPR report about the fact that the Trump campaign is doing the traditional door knocking. Partly this is a cultural difference between, the Biden campaign has been very reticent to do a whole lot given the pandemic of public events and have essentially pulled their ground game altogether. There's another report out of Michigan about how you basically don't see the Biden campaign there at all. You don't see their signs. They don't have offices. You don't see them doing much whatsoever, which is very reminiscent, as Zach Carter is pointing out there, of the Hillary Clinton strategy of we've got the data. We don't need people to actually go there and talk to voters. That's so old school. We don't actually need that. Now, on the flip side, I will say, this is basically their strategy for the Democratic primary, too.
And it did work.
And it worked. I mean, you remember, there were states he didn't even have a single staffer in, that he never traveled to. Never went to once, didn't have a single staffer on the ground, and just, rolled up victories like it was nothing. So, I don't know.
I mean, look, like we said, it's likely that he wins. But if Trump wins, this is how it's going to happen. It's going to be all of these little things that compound into the margins in which he's going to eke it out over the edge. And there you go. At least you know, because they're not telling you a lot of this stuff on cable.
Very good point. All right, we'll have more Rising for you after this.